Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spiral Out Podcast, where we dive deep into the minds and experiences of artists, creators, painters, musicians, movie makers. On today's episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with Jeff Nentrup. Everybody knows the Nentrup poster. Night one, Tools, 2 nights in LA. But his talents extend far beyond that remarkable piece. Jeff is a multi-talented artist whose portfolio includes fine art, commercial work, film. He worked on Magic the Gathering cards. He's done movie posters. He even did a collaboration with NASA on a futuristic space probe. His work is really nothing short of breathtaking. His unique perspective on the world will leave you feeling inspired and awed. I know by the end of this episode, I was definitely inspired. So join us today as we explore Jeff's journey as an artist, his creative process, what drives him to explore such complex and fascinating subjects. You know, from the vast expanses of space to current Western art to everything else. So sit back, relax, and prepare to spiral out with Jeff Nentrup. But before that, there's some cool stuff coming up. There's a benefit show that Primus is doing. I will be there and around, hopefully talking to fans of both the show and obviously Primus. Danny Carey and Justin Chancellor are going to be there. We got some other cool artists and people coming up on the podcast, some very exciting people. Kyle Sharp, a couple musicians coming on, hopefully. So stay tuned for all of that. Again, thank you for listening and spiral out, my friends.
I mean, feel free to ask, man. I mean, I do kind of fly under the radar a bit for a number of reasons. And kind of been having a fairly low profile existence, at least in terms of social media and stuff recently. But, the gist of it is I have a fine art world and an illustration world. And sometimes I try to avoid intermingling the two. So, but feel free, man. I'm happy to talk about anything. I don't care.
Cool. First of all, Thank you for coming on. This is a big one for me.
My pleasure.
It's a real big one for me.
My pleasure. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So first, right off the bat, hello, everyone, and welcome to Spiral Out Podcast. I'm your host, Chris West. And on today's show, we have Jeff Nentrup.
Hello.
Did I say it right?
Yes, Nentrup.
He's a fine art painter, illustrator, designer. You've done stuff in movies. You've pretty much dabbled in a little bit of everything, it seems like. I would like to, I usually start with the tool stuff and then kind of progress out of there. So we can get started there if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Sounds great.
So you did the, was it night 1 or night 2 of that LA show?
I believe it was night 1, if I remember correctly.
I was at that show.
Right.
I read somewhere that you were there as well.
Yes, I was.
That's gotta have been a trip, right?
Yeah. No, I'm definitely a surreal moment, to sort of be in the house of Kobe Bryant. And
right.
I mean, I was there for, their Game 7 win against the Celtics in 2010 when they won their last championship, and they just retired Kobe's jerseys. And I remember sort of standing there, my wife and I were guests in Adams Row next to the CEO of Gibson Guitars and looking up at Kobe's recently retired jerseys and, seeing people walking around Staples Center with my art on their chests. Pretty cool feeling.
It's got to be a very surreal experience. I forgot that he had just died. Like,
no, not yet.
Or he had just retired.
Yeah, just before he had passed.
That's right. I'm trying to remember where I sat there. Somewhere towards the back.
We were close enough that after the show, Adam told me he could see us.
Oh, that's wild. And so you went to school with Corin, and was Sean there, and you guys kind of all went to school together, right?
Yeah, that's right. Met Corinne at Art Center, years ago, and yeah, Sean Cheatham, Natalia Fabia.
That's right.
Fair and Loathing, another Tool poster artist. I met my wife there, Sonia Palencia. So yeah, just a really great community of painters, and we're all still very close. Sean's my neighbor now. We've been in a band together for, I don't know, ever.
I really like that guy.
He's amazing. Yeah, one of my best friends in the world.
So the Tool poster, I mean, let's start off with, concept and design. I heard it was directly influenced by the song Numa.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, let's see, I'm trying to remember. I think in 2019 we were over at Adam and Corinne's for like sort of end of the summer barbecue, and he asked me if I'd like to do one of the pieces. I've been a fan for over 30 years now, and of course leapt at the opportunity. It's a huge honor. So he's like, all right, well, I'll have the management get in touch with you this week. So I think it was around Thursday they reached out, and we hammered out the negotiation, and they said that if there's a certain show you'd like to have the poster featured in, let us know. I said, is LA available? I'm from LA. My parents were from LA. Tool's an LA band. And they said, yeah, except, the only thing is I would need, something by Monday of next week. And I had already decided that I wanted to do an original piece of art for this, and not, just sort of license something that I'd already had. But hey, I've been in the business a long time, and that's not an unusual turnaround for an illustration project. So I hammered out the details on Thursday. I sat down on Friday, came up with the idea of what I wanted to do, painted it Saturday and Sunday, had it photographed Monday morning, and off to their management in time to meet the deadline. So it was a really quick one.
So let's get into the actual creation of the design. You said it was a Thursday, right? You sat down. You're listening to, I'm guessing, the new album at the time. It just came out, and because it's a striking figure in my opinion.
Thank you.
I don't know. I say this to every artist, but I mean it when I talk about different Tool artists. It seems very different than everything else, but I think that was the point for this last couple of tours. Getting so many different artists is to have so much different stuff. But specifically this one, it rings very, I don't know, it rings something, and that would just with me, but a ton of collectors. I don't know if you know about how popular this specific poster is, but it hits some nerves.
Yeah, no, I do have an idea. I've, been hit up by a lot of the fans in the interviewing years, and it's pretty humbling to still see the the unsigned poster, $2,000 on eBay, and I still get people reaching out asking me if I have any left.
So again, how did you tell me what the process was of creating this person, this being, and what was the idea behind it?
Well, I sort of loosely had the idea that I wanted to do something that was, more of a simple motif, kind of an iconic presentation rather than something, complex or like a whole scene, sort of a solitary figure with, some added interest. And, as I was listening to the record, that song stood out for me, just mostly conceptually. There's a lot of great, lyrical ideas. And, of course, this is me interpreting somebody else's art. But, there's a lot of ideas in there, wake up, release the light. There's a line that says, bound to this flesh, this guise, this mask, this dream. So some of that was a nod to, though, just those ideas and my interpretation of that. Now, okay, here we go, because I've had a lot of people ask me about this piece and what does it mean, and I've always been a big ardent believer that we should be able to create our own ideas about things, and
100%.
So I will talk about what it means to me, but some people think it's Danny, and it's I didn't intend that.
I
So
guess I can see now that you say it, maybe somewhere in the cheek and nose.
hey, if it's Danny to you, then I don't want to disturb that. That's totally fine.
I've
As
never
long
thought of that until you said it right now.
yeah, I've heard a lot of interesting stories, about what it means to different people, and again, I'm fine with that. And this again, I'm responding to my interpretation of somebody else's art, their lyrics, their music, and I may not be right, but to me, it was this idea of like, the moment somebody passes from life to death or to afterlife, and this mask being our body, being our spirit, the interim between our physical and spiritual selves. So that was kind of the gist of it. I had taken some pictures of the death mask of Theodore Géricault, who's a French painter from the 19th century. Death mask, if anybody doesn't know, is a practice they used to do in Europe where immediately after somebody had passed, they would basically take a plaster casting of their face and preserve that. It's called a death mask.
Yeah.
And it was a real interesting idea to me. This painter, he was famous for this painting called the Raft of the Medusa, about a shipwreck and just kind of a tragic event. And this death mask really kind of symbolized that moment for me, that tied very closely. So I based the painting off of that. He's sort of shrouded, almost like a shaman or some kind of spiritual figure, which is more metaphoric, more symbolic. And then I used the geometry around the piece as a way of sort of symbolizing that particular moment of somebody's death and entering into the next phase. So it's almost a celestial clock, if you will.
Okay.
And at the time I had read somewhere, Adam was talking about the number 7 had figured prominently into the writing of the record. I'm guessing in time signatures or, arrangement structures or, God knows what goes through those guys' brains.
Swear to God.
Their whole music,
Dude, it could be like 7 anything.
Yeah. So there's 7 points, graphically on that as a nod to the band and the record. But that in a nutshell is kind of, what it means to me and what it was meant to embody.
So I asked online, I do this before any interview, and the number one question I got was exactly what you just explained, is what specifically did those 7 dots mean?
Yeah, it was great because I actually had a chance, after that sample show. It was the first time I'd actually seen the poster, and I was surprised at, the beautiful foil that it was on. I had no idea that they were going to, be going that direction. And it was just a gorgeous print. And, Adam, he was showing it to me, and he, I was like, explained to him, I had no idea it was going to be this foil thing. And he goes, oh yeah, I actually went into Photoshop and selected out the whites and sent it to the printer that way. And I just blown away. I mean, I had no idea he was that involved in, hands-on in the process of these. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, I like the 7 dots.
Of course he did.
I was like, oh, you caught that? He goes, yeah, of course.
And it must be nice to have a personal relationship too, when it comes to something like this. It's a little bit more enjoyable, I guess, than maybe some more commercial stuff where you don't even really meet the people in person that you're working with.
Oh yeah. It's a huge honor, to be trusted with it. Adam's, I've known him for a while now. He's just such a great guy. I mean, I don't have to tell anybody listening that these guys are supporters of the arts and artists unlike nobody else in the business.
It's unheard of, in my opinion, like music to art, how much they just push other people up.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a direct result of Adam being an artist himself. He's a fantastic sculptor and artist in his own right, outside of music. Corinne is phenomenal. She always has been. I remember her, walking around as a student with her paint box. And, as a painter, you always kind of knew which people were painters, versus the people that were, having to take painting and drawing classes as a prerequisite. And those guys are definitely very, very tied to the arts.
So everybody that knows Tool knows that, again, we're talking about the art, but they seem to have a very specific, at times, direction. Did you feel like any responsibility to keep it like a certain level or keep it at a certain tone or anything like that?
I didn't really. I mean, Adam's charge for me was just, whatever you want, really, anything goes. And, that was a great idea to be presented with. I mean, they have a certain aesthetic, obviously. And I think, I would assume that, some of that in terms of who Adam was asking to be, the poster artist for this had to factor into that. He was pretty familiar. But having said that, there's a great range of stuff, stuff that I would have never expected.
Same.
And I think they make really beautiful posters.
Yeah.
So I think that is kind of inherent in the amount of, different work that they've gotten on these tours.
So we're going to talk about remarks now because yours are like the, I don't know, there's like I'd say 4 or 5 artists that everybody talks about when it comes to remarks. And I don't know if it's pronounced remarks or remarques, but
I call it remarks.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Your specific design lended so much, it seems like. Yours and Sean's I've seen do some very creative and wonderful things that you could do like anything with, because it's, you put hands in there, you can do this. Sean, with the skull, did so much with his as well. Was this the first time you've been asked to do something like this, or like what was your experience remarking and learning how to do that and whatnot?
Well, yeah, I mean, most of my work is either commercial or fine art in nature. So I'm typically either working directly with and for a client for a paycheck, or I'm completely on my own doing whatever I want. So this was a new experience for me, entering the whole poster, especially the wild aftermarket. I was not quite prepared for that. But in doing a little bit of research and finding my feet, I realized that the doodling was a big part of, a very coveted thing, particularly, if you landed an Adam doodle or something like that. And then just, looking around and seeing what some other artists had done. And, they were fairly simple for the most part. So my foray into that was getting ready to sell a batch of my posters online. And I think this was like December 2019. So, shortly after the poster had come out. And I was just, there was a high demand for them. So I wanted to get a small batch out. So I sold about, 10 or 12 of them. And I decided to do a quick doodle on about 3 of them. And I wasn't, it was the night before I was going to sell them. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was just like, oh, he would look cool with some hands, I think. And, let me just look for some, some other elements that I could, just use to create some interest. And again, I was keying a little bit off of the lyrics, Maynard's talking about this spark. And I ended up, using lightning bolts as an element on a lot of my remarks and stuff directly from that. But yeah, it really happened sort of the night before. It was like, oh, let's do some hands. I could do a whole series out of that. So there's somewhere out there's 3 different posters with these gold hands that I drew, rather quickly. Did all 3 of them, right then and there. And it wasn't until after that when, I had a chance to kind of slow down a little bit and figure things out. Then I decided like, okay, well, let me make a thing out of this, get some paint pens and spend a little more time, then the hands went blue and I started thinking about, all the different things I could do with that, which is, pretty endless.
Yeah. I think my favorite one you did is the one with Adam Jones's guitar.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That one was awesome. I've seen it, dozens of them. One holding the tool, the like dick tool.
Yeah.
That one was great. Like you said, lightning hands. I haven't seen the gold hands yet. Whoever got
there's a
those
few of
might
them
have.
out
I
there.
haven't seen those ones yet. Is that the only poster you've done for any band?
Yes, I think so. I've done, I've designed some music videos, and I've done some album covers, and even an animation video for an electronic artist. So, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But yeah, it was my first concert poster.
Would you do another one?
Yeah, in a heartbeat.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I like about it. I like the texture. It looks like somebody threw it through the ringer. And, so I like to get the poster of the people I'm interviewing. And especially because I went to that show, and I might cut this out, but it was a son of a bitch to get this one. But just seeing it in person, there's like the marks towards the bottom right that almost look like scratches and this and that. And
Yeah.
I really enjoy that kind of texture. I don't know why. It just feels realer to me. Plus the figure is just cool. I have this whole thing. It reminds me of Indiana Jones. I don't, but
can't go wrong there.
No. And,
yeah, I mean the noise and texture was definitely a conscious choice. I opted to do the piece as an oil painting. In fact, you can sort of see it hanging up on the wall there.
Oh yeah.
And so there's definitely some inherent texture in the brushwork, and then just the way the painting actually translates into printing, you get a bit of noise. And when I was putting the graphic elements on top, there was a conscious effort to sort of leave some of that visual noise as a device. And then it interpreted in the print really interesting, especially where, there's some spots where that foil comes through.
Yeah.
And they look like sparks and gives the piece a little bit of motion. I've always been a big fan of that in my work. If you're painting a scene, add a couple of birds or, a wisp of smoke here and there, turn the lights on, put some, smoke coming out of the chimney, something, just to kind of give a little bit of sense of motion to a piece.
Was there any remarks that you turned down? Where you're like, I'm not doing that? I know the fans can be somewhat pushy when it comes to those things.
Honestly, not really. I mean, I was pretty pleased with everybody's suggestions. And, I approached this whole endeavor as a fan myself. I saw Tool on Lollapalooza in 93. I was like 16 years old or 17 years old or something. So I've been a fan for a long, long time. I used to go to the small clubs around LA and see them after that, 94, 95. And that, from the onset of this, I definitely just wanted to do something that I would want to see and get excited about as a fan. And then as I've been engaging with people for remark requests and things like that, just very much in service of their ideas. And nobody had anything that was, not uninteresting or, not.
You mean nobody asked you to put big bat wings behind them or anything?
No, everybody was pretty cool. And, that's also a nice thing in terms of the collaboration. A lot of them were very personal. And I was all for that, take something that is personal and make it even more so. I've had some really interesting from, some sailors that wanted a nautical theme to, there was a detective in Australia that we did a really cool piece. It had his badge and his gun, his standard issue weapon. And,
that's awesome.
it was great. And he was like, if you're ever down this way, I'll give you a ride along. I was like, I might have to take you up on
right?
that.
I would do that in a heartbeat, especially in Australia.
Yeah.
I know
people added, wanted their personal, numbers that were significant to them included in the piece and things like that. There were a couple that were, maybe a little on the nose. I had to try to find a way to just to squeeze out some interest for myself, Sure. But yeah, no, nothing that was rejected.
That's awesome. It's very, I mean, again, me and you have not talked before, right? So right. I'm always really excited when the artist I'm talking about or talking with is also excited about what they're doing. Because it seems to go both ways where, I've talked to artists that are just overworked,
Yeah,
and,
sure. Sure.
they're coming on here and they're doing me a favor for sure. And I always feel for them, like, but it's again, it's always refreshing, and you're like, you seem so excited, and it's really, really, like I said, refreshing and comforting. And
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm definitely overworked, but I mean,
well, I will say this, from the people that do listen to my podcast, whenever there's an artist like that on, they always say so. They're like, wow, he seems so nice, and it makes me like his art more.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. Yeah. I mean, I feel very, very lucky to be doing the work that I do. I love my job. I love what I do. It's, I can draw and paint for a client for 10, 12 hours and then sit down and paint something else to relax. And, that's a huge gift, and I don't take it for granted.
I almost don't know what to say to that. That's awesome. I have one more question about the tool poster before we transition. Most tool posters have a heptagram somewhere. I cannot find the one on yours if it exists.
You're talking about the stamp?
The star. Yeah, the star. Like, I wish I could show you.
Yeah, it's like, so on that particular print of 650 on that edition, they embossed their heptagram logo on there.
So
is that what you're referring to?
No. And so it's kind of like a Where's Waldo with most posters for years. And again, I've been trying to figure this out of whether or not they do it for every poster or just 90% of them. There is a heptagram logo, usually somewhere. Let me see if I can, hold on one second. You see his chest?
Yeah.
So that star is usually on most posters. Whether or not, sorry, hold on. Hopefully, let me get it back in focus. Sorry. Yours was the one nobody could find. And usually it's added afterwards, sometimes without the artist knowing, apparently. But he didn't do it to you.
Well, yeah, I know that there was nothing added to my art. It was pretty much the way I handed it to them. But I do know that there is an embossed heptagram on, physically in the poster. I think, which is for that particular edition, was their way of, an authenticity.
Yeah, because now they do like a sticker, like a shiny sticker, and they used to emboss. But other than that, there's from going back to like 2009 or 6, they've had, again, most posters have a heptagram, and with collectors and fans, it's kind of like a Where's Waldo thing, like, you can find it. But you kind of just answered my question. Yeah. So I'm going to kind of transition into your normal career. You do a lot of God, you do everything, it seems like. But I'm really curious about the stuff you do in movies. First, like you've done, I see on your Instagram you did like the My Chemical Romance background. What are those called? Marquees?
Matte painting. And then I designed the scenic painting that was used in the sort of the background.
How often do you do those? Because that's got to be huge, right?
Yeah, well, there was a team that painted that, so I design it, and then they have production people that show up and actually do the physical set building.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that particular job, I think it was around 2006, maybe. I was contacted as a concept design artist, and so was working with Sam Bayer, the director. He's a famous music video director. He directed the "Smells Like Teen Spirit" video, Bullet with Butterfly Wings for Smashing Pumpkins, and I'm trying to remember some others. But yeah, huge director, and we had one of the same professors, so we kind of hit it off and sat down. He explained to me what he was looking for, and so I go home and do a bunch of artwork, and they sort of base the set off of that, and like I said, design the scenic painting, and then I was down on set as well, getting to sort of see what was being built, because the guys that were doing the special effects had actually hired me after that to finish the matte paintings. So they build a small portion of the set and then digitally create the rest of it that looks like it goes on forever, so they don't have to build everything.
So how do you think you balance the needs of like the client with your own artistic vision, or is it they hire you because of your solid artistic vision, let's say?
Well, you can get both extremes. I mean, sometimes you have a client coming to you for what you do, and that's what they want, and then other times they want something way outside of your wheelhouse. And I think like when you're in art school, most people will tell you you can kind of go one of two general ways. You can either diversify or specialize. So specializing would be, say for example, you paint apples, and that's all you paint. Your book is full of apples. When the apple job comes along, you should be able expected to land that gig, right? I'm a diversifier, so I was all through school and a hardcore oil painter, and sort of fell into digital painting and entertainment design right at the end in my last semester. I studied with Ryan Church, who was the concept design supervisor on Star Wars 2 and 3 at that time. And,
wait. Star Wars episode 2 and 3 or
Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith.
Gotcha. I still like it. I'm just clarifying. I'm just clarifying which Star Wars we're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. So it was around that time, 2002. And, I was talking to ILM about, being a matte painter on Revenge of the Sith, and, wasn't quite ready to leave LA. If you're familiar with the Southern California.
I was born and raised there.
My family's here, my network life. So I wasn't quite ready to relocate up there, but it got me into the field, the entertainment field, right out of school. And, I had a professor of mine that was working with Warner Brothers Consumer Products doing Harry Potter paintings. So he actually hired me right out of school. And, we ended up doing 180 or so Harry Potter paintings for Warner Brothers.
Now, is this before the movie came out?
That was like around, I think, Harry Potter 3 or so.
So there's already a kind of an aesthetic.
A franchise, yeah, for sure. Yeah. But, landing a big gig like that and having all that work in my portfolio, that landed me a good agent. And, I kind of went right into the film and entertainment business, being here in LA and just sort of having a diversified skill set. And one of my first jobs right out of school was doing I don't know if you saw the first Underworld film with Kate Beckinsale. There's a scene where she sits down and she's doing a voiceover narrating the history of the lichens and the werewolves. And there's these woodblock etchings that are used to depict some of these key points in their history. So I did 2 or 3 of those, and it was kind of a trip to go see the film right when it came out, and these scenes were taking up the entire screen, 50 feet wide in the movie theater, and
that's insane.
I'm right out of school, and it was it was a bit of a wake up call. You go, wow.
You're like, I'm doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting it. I'm always very curious. So like you said, the Harry Potter thing was kind of already established. Have you helped design an aesthetic for a film from scratch that had no art or no art at all? Like,
yeah, sure. I mean, I was one of the designers on the film Dreamgirls with Beyonce, yep. Eddie Murphy, Jamie Foxx. I did a bunch of work on that. It was a totally different world. Doing a musical that was period set. I worked on Jack the Giant Killer for Bryan Singer, which was another fantasy film.
Let's talk about that one. They obviously have an art director, right? And that person would call you and say, "Hey, make me some concept designs and whatnot."
Yeah, correct. Typically it's a production designer who's responsible for everything that you see on screen. So they're sort of the head of the art department, and and they're in charge of everything from the sets and the things that have to be physically built to the things that are done digitally. Now they'll work with a concept design supervisor or a visual effects supervisor who handles the nuts and bolts of that, but it all is sort of funneled through the production designer.
but so when they come to you, they go, "Hey, we're going to make this movie. We need
Yeah.
some concepts of such and such." Like, what guidelines do they give you? Because ultimately, it's they have an idea, but it's like kind of cooking. I'm a chef, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I make menus, but ultimately the end product comes from the people I ask to do the work. So
True. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
And, it's funny because there's like, in concept design, there's a lot of stuff that is taken verbatim from the work, or sometimes it's sort of based on the work. And, that can depend on a number of different factors. Like on Dreamgirls, for example, I do recall an instance where I was designing this 1960s Miami club, and it was a Eddie Murphy performance. And, we had lunch with the extras that day on set, and they're all dressed up in 60s and stuff. And when they shot that scene, but I remember at the last minute, I had to wrap this up, and it was just sort of missing something. And at the last minute, I decided to add these big sort of pink dome lights in the back of the room, and just quickly drew in a couple, and it was off. And then I think it was about 3 or 4 days later, we were on set and took a peek in that room. And as soon as we open the door and walk in, there are those pink lights above me, that I just sort of at the last minute thought to add in to add, some interest. And it can be like that in concept design. You really never know what's going to make it to the screen. In fact, I just finished a job recently for AMC called The Mayfair Witches, which is an Anne Rice story. And I did quite a bit of concept design work for that show. And to see, some of these sets, the way they came out in real life were pretty verbatim from the artwork.
and I'm guessing like on a project like that, she's obviously a prolific writer, right? So you're reading the source material and you're just like ingesting it and kind of like letting it meld and then bleh.
I wish I sometimes I do get to read the scripts and familiarize myself with the material as much as possible, but not always. And on that particular one, I was working very closely with the production designer, who had some ideas, and then it was a bit of a collaboration. You bring some ideas to the table, and they have a certain idea about what they need because they're usually very familiar with the source material.
I seen on a website somewhere you did some concept work for The Mummy 3.
Yeah, correct.
How and now is that the Brandon Fraser one back in 2007?
Yes, that was the one with Jet Li, set in ancient China.
Again, I guess I'm going to transition a little bit more, meaning I've seen stuff like your tool painting and on your Instagram, and then obviously your personal stuff where it's like like a lot of great landscape, Western style, and just these fantastical, like the one I saw for The Mummy 3, which was kind of just like this. I forget how, I'm not good at explaining. That's why I edit. But it was like this structure and in kind of like a jungle kind of, but not really. I'm just curious on how do you attack something that has no reference, I guess, because that's kind of the stuff that boggles my mind. Because again, on your Instagram, there's like a photo of you in the water, painting like this little island and boat and whatnot, and you obviously have a reference, right? But then there's these things that you paint over here that have zero reference, and you just have to create them in your mind.
Yes. I mean, I would say the best thing is just having a visual library that you build up over time. So, I've spent years drawing from live models, figure drawing, portrait painting, things like that, landscape painting out of doors, and, getting a sense of how light behaves and, the structure of things. And, as a concept design artist, you have to have kind of a broad range of interests. So, asking questions and being curious is also a huge bonus in that line of work. Where, if you're asked to design something and you're not terribly familiar with it, it's a great excuse to do a deep dive,
Right.
and learn the difference between, cumulus and cumulus stratus clouds, and, go in depth in an area and learn about it. And through that, then you can start to use your imagination more and use it as a springboard. And, a great trick for doing concept design is combining things, combining different worlds. So you're taking something as a starting point and then bringing in either a different technology or a different shape language, or, some other different idea that sits in tangent to it. If that answers the question.
Of course, 100%. It makes perfect sense. What you're saying is you're using your accumulative knowledge of your whole career, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Ultimately,
I mean, that's honestly a really fun part of the job is, it's great to, I've also in the past 3 or 4 years done a lot of stage design for a company, and, they'll come to you one day and just be like, okay, we got to do an underwater theme. Awesome. I mean, spend a week or two just nothing but underwater design ideas, deep diving on coral, no pun intended, and just having fun. I mean, that's really kind of, at the end of the day, I would say my goal and my role is to have fun and do stuff that I would get excited about. That's always a good barometer for me, is if it's visually interesting, if it's something that I'm excited about, then other people will typically be excited too. And that's definitely how I approach the Tool poster, being familiar with the size of the band and the ardent fan base. If you think about that stuff too much, you can get pretty overwhelmed. I mean, if I think about, some of my commercial work and who it's going to, my work's been in front of Spielberg, it's been in front of J.K. Rowling, it's been in front of Brad Pitt, it's been in front of all these, huge people. Sure. And if you sit there and think about that, oh my God, Spielberg is going to see this tomorrow, you'll psych yourself out,
Oh, 100%.
So I try not to worry about that stuff. My objective has always been, let me control the things that I can control and trust my training and my skills and my experience and do the best job I can and not worry about the things I can't control, like how other people are going to interpret my work or if they're going to like it or not. And,
well, I mean,
I was pleased.
You've obviously, like you said earlier, you've done the work. You've taken the deep dives that you've needed to take into. You've practiced, like you said. You can paint for 10 hours and then you relax by painting. I mean, that doesn't create somebody. That doesn't create an unconfident worker, in my opinion. That just creates somebody who's getting more and more confident and more skilled, which again leads me somewhere. I had this written down. Somewhere it was written about you that you were a master painter, and it's like, now they're talking to you, I'm like, yeah, I get it. that's kind of probably what a master would do if he was good at, at anything, sword fighting. I don't know why that came to mind, but anything in general. Chef,
it's true.
You have to put, what is it, 10,000 hours to be, basically good at something.
I agree with that. Yeah. And I mean, far beyond that point by now, but, I heard an adage at one point that was just, it's a thing of beauty to watch a professional at work. And I agree with that. It can be anything, just that dedication, that familiarity is something I love. And, you certainly would understand that as a chef. There's a great deal of art and a borderline obsession that you have to do something at a high level.
I'm not that good. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, if you're here at painting, I'm somewhere near. I'm trying to think of somebody who's not very good at painting when it comes to a chef. I'm going to change it up a bit. Explain to me what you did for NASA. I'm a big space guy.
Okay, so I was contacted by one of their engineers a few years back that was designing an eel-like robot. So, okay, let me back up a little.
I have the picture right here, first of all.
Okay.
So I'm looking at least one of them.
Yeah, you can see it on my Instagram if anybody's curious, but yeah. So basically, they designed these different space missions, and this particular one was one of the key places in our solar system that they're looking for life, extraterrestrial life, is on the moon of Enceladus, which is one of Saturn's moons. Now, the reason it's so attractive is it has a ice shell and a liquid ocean beneath that. Now, granted, it's very, very far away from the sun, but here on Earth, there are these thermal vents at the bottom of the ocean that generate heat. So these people are absolutely brilliant. I had a chance to go to JPL and sit down with some of the premier scientists, that specialize in Saturn, that specialize in extraterrestrial biology, and these engineers, and these people are just so inspiring and so brilliant. And they explained all this to me, that they want to design this robot that can basically burrow. They'll send a spacecraft into orbit that will launch down to the surface of the moon and then deploy this other robot. And these are intelligent robots because of the distance. They have to be able to think on their own. They have to be able to avoid danger and, in a sense, be able to intelligently survive. Because by the time the radio transmission would go back and forth, these things could already be lost. So this would essentially burrow down through the ice. I don't know. I think a couple, 2-3 kilometers down, and be able to probe the liquid ocean for signs of life. And they have all this different scientific equipment on board. So when I was asked to do that, they basically wanted to see what this might look like in the environment, and get a sense of place that they can use to promote, to raise funds, to put forth the idea to their board. And these are $5-6 billion missions,
if not more.
Having going into these meetings armed with something that's visually inspiring can be a real advantage. And in a way, I sort of likened it to the creation of the national parks when Thomas Moran was this painter back in the 19th century who was commissioned by if I'm trying to remember correctly, I think he was actually commissioned by the oil companies or gold prospectors, I think, that wanted the land that the national parks were created on. And he went out and did all these beautiful paintings, brought them back to Congress. And immediately after, they instituted our national park system to preserve these places just based on the beauty of these paintings. And it felt a little like that, sort of trying to show people the potential of a great and historic mission like this. And, ever since then, I've been telling people that I help NASA look for aliens.
I would say the exact same thing. It seems like a big responsibility, because when I was reading about this photo or this painting, I was trying to figure out, okay, why does NASA need it? And I mean, you obviously explained it perfectly. They're going to use it for promotional stuff and whatnot. And did you have to sit down with a scientist who would potentially build this, and him explain to you, like, we're going to have these rings and it's going to look like this and it's going to have this hook as a tail? And
Yes. I got to tour, the facilities where they build these things. And, I'm delighted to say that a robot workshop at JPL is exactly like you think it would be. There are robot parts all over the place. I was stepping over gears and wires. And these guys are just having a blast in their workshop, coming up with problems and then solving them. And, honestly, it was one of the, real career highlight for me to be working with those guys and to spend some time over there and to be, a witness to what goes into these space missions. Just, a real treat for me.
The most I know about AI right now is ChatGPT. So I'm trying to conceptualize, like, all right, that's the top of the game that I know of. What must they have to where they can send a NASA space eel into Saturn's moon and it can just calculate, movements, textures, everything to survive on its own? all I can say is we don't know shit about what they got.
It's remarkable. And I mean, you have to, when you're on campus there, you have to have, a certain level of security clearance, and you have to have an escort on campus at all times. And, it's funny because like at one point I had to break from a meeting and I had to be escorted to the restroom just to go take a leak by one, this guy that has
Awesome.
two PhDs. And the whole time, he's talking to me about, biology and plate tectonics on Saturn and their gravitational this and that. And, it was so cool.
That is awesome. You're like, thanks for watching me pee, though. No,
well, you can go in with
no. No, that's insane. To tell you the truth. Again, what kind of responsibility did you feel making that? And again, concept and design. I mean, you got Saturn there, you got the moons in the background. You're trying to like, these people have a goal, and they come to you and they're like, make it look cool so we can sell it.
It's funny you say that phrase, because I think make it look cool is probably, over 20 years now I've been doing this. That's probably my number one job description. And, it answers a lot of questions, and it checks a lot of boxes, because, I have to, obviously I have to go down the checklist, and they go, okay, we want to see the robot. We want to see the lander. We want, it'd probably be good to see Saturn in the background for orientation. And the rest, you just get to have fun, like make it look cool, and if it does, then people get excited. And, that's a hugely rewarding part of the job.
I'm going to call this episode Make It Look Cool.
That would be fitting.
Yeah. You know what you also made look cool is a couple of Magic the Gathering cards.
Excellent segue. That was perfect.
I used to collect Magic the Gathering back in the day. I was kind of a contrarian when I was a little kid, and everybody was collecting Pokemon, and I was like, nah, fuck that. I'm getting Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, way more fun, right?
They were just, you know what? They just looked way cooler.
Yeah.
Can you tell, again, I'm going to ask a bunch of weird little things that I could find about you. So
Sure.
that's a huge game. I don't know how many people they get to paint those cards, but I mean, they have a great, crazy following. I'm sure probably crazier than Tool following.
Huge campaign, Magic, and Wizards of the Coast is a great company. I did a lot of work with them, fairly early on in my career, and I think I was doing some book covers for some of their fantasy fiction. And, through those channels, again, I think some of the best advice I ever got in my life was one of my professors in school, who just simply said, good work opens doors. And, I took out an ad, around 2005 in an illustration publication. Art director saw it. She contacted me to do some book covers for Wizards of the Coast. I did a good job. Then, another department reached out to me to do some package artwork for their iconic Red Dragon sculpture. They sent me one of the sculptures. It's over there. And then I don't think you can see it, but
no.
And then, the art director at Magic said, hey, saw some artwork you did for us. We're wondering if you want to do a couple cards. Absolutely. And the rest is history.
Do they tell you, like, okay, this is what this person's powers are going to be?
Yes. Yeah. For that, I mean, those are specific characters for, as you know, and I mean, I've done also some work for Dungeons and Dragons publications and stuff for them as well. And those, as you know, are very like, okay, this character has this skill. So you play that card and it's for a certain purpose. So it has to convey that idea.
So the reason I'm kind of interested about that card is, it's this big.
Yeah, right.
How big was the original painting?
Usually everything is done a bit larger or at size, so that, if you do something slightly larger, it reduces down nice and tight. You get into trouble if you go the other way and do something tiny and then have to, blow it up for a billboard or a bus kiosk or something like that.
What you're obviously painting all the time, and I'm sure you do big, small, yada yada yada. What is your most comfortable dimensions?
Oh, well, that really depends on the job. And, I'm, it's funny because I'm probably almost 100% digital for commercial work. It's just kind of the way that things work, and it's faster. And I adopted that because I can do 5 jobs digitally in the time it would take me to do one traditionally. And then most clients are so used to working with the digital format that they expect a certain amount of changes and editability, and it's a lot easier to do digitally. So size is less of an issue. If you have a powerful enough computer, you can just res it way up, and then that covers a lot of bases. Keep things layered in Photoshop, so that you can tweak them later if you need to, or swap a head out. Like I think a couple years ago, I was asked to do the IMAX poster for the Jungle Cruise film, and that film came out on like July 30th, and I think it was July 6th that both Emily Blunt and The Rock had final say on their likeness, and The Rock's camp came back and said, "We want a whole new head." So I had, on the 6th. So I basically repainted him overnight, had it off the next day, and that thing was out in theaters a few weeks later.
I have that written down. Literally, the question I have written down is, "What was it like to paint The Rock's face?"
Yeah. Really fun, actually. I mean, that was a really, really fun job. As a Southern California native, I grew up going to Disneyland from the time I could remember, and that was a lot of fun to do. To do that in that sort of classic '80s style, and high adventure palette and colors and textures.
It's kind of like an Enzo, a Scotty guy, one kind of. What was The Rock's original head look like? Was it the same? Was he doing the same side stare and hat, or?
It was a little more passive, and I actually approved of the change. I think it made the poster a lot stronger. He looks a little tougher. He looks a little more rocky, for lack of a better term. But
I got
he looked a little passive in the other one. But yeah, really, really fun job for me.
Let me reference my pictures. I was too busy staring at The Rock's giant head. I'm just kidding. I actually enjoyed that movie. Talk about your band with Mr. Cheatham.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're called Del Toro, and that band sort of formed out of us being students over 20 years ago. Sean and myself and our good friend John Paul Altamirano is also an art center student, and we would get together and paint after class. We'd take turns sitting for each other, or having friends and people sit for us. And on your breaks, if there was a guitar around, we'd just start strumming around and playing. And then, I've been in bands my whole life, since before I started painting.
What instrument?
So, we always just had a great time playing together. And then those guys actually formed a band together and had, different sort of guitar, bass player and drummer. And then I sort of came into the picture a bit later. But I was around those guys at the the inception of them, just sort of writing songs together, and it was a natural fit for us.
What instrument do you play in that band?
I play bass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever do any shows?
Not lately. It's been quite a while. Everybody's really busy, and it'd be fun to play again. I mean, we've definitely done some really fun gigs. I've opened for Bad Religion, and
Awesome.
some stuff like that.
I know the connection there.
Yeah, they're friends. They're friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a big question. Do you have any like superstitions or rituals that you do before painting?
I'm not a real superstitious guy, but ritual would be, aside from the usual like coffee and all that stuff. I like to have music playing while I'm working. And I tend to break up my work in 2 different phases. One would be the conceptual phase, and one the production phase. And it's even more important in the conceptual phase to have, something on that is invoking a certain mood. So if it's, let's say a client project, I'm doing, something for, sci-fi or something fantasy or whatever. I'll put on, something more ambient. Or, if I'm working on my own stuff, it can also just really help set the mood. And then equally in the production phase, there's nothing like, coming on and just putting some up-tempo rock or something on, flipping the studio lights on and getting to work, because like I said, I'm a bass player. I'm very rhythm oriented. And sometimes I'll find myself making brush marks in the rhythm with the music. And,
Nice. That's awesome.
But it helps a lot, it helps, from the inspiration and ideas to just physically, keeping my energy up and getting to work. I think I heard David Lee Roth one time in an interview say, like, the song I get out of the car on has to be a good one. Otherwise, everything can go to hell. Yeah. So he'll sit there and wait in the car until the right song. Okay. Now I can go be David Lee Roth.
And not only that, I have to finish certain songs too. Like,
oh yeah,
I can't get out of the car unless it's, a handful of specific songs. I'm like, I can't leave yet.
Yeah. So I'm very sensitive to music. So it plays a big role in my work habits.
Nice. I got a couple more, if you don't mind.
Sure. No.
What's the most unexpected source of inspiration that you've had for, creating art?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't know if I've ever thought about that. Unexpected source. Well, here's one you might appreciate, but I think it was my wife that really connected me to the artistry in cooking. And I've always loved to eat. But
yeah, who doesn't?
I think it was probably through cocktails, like just making a really nicely layered cocktail where you can taste all of the different ingredients, and just understanding the creativity that happens in food. Now, I don't know if that leads totally back to your question about painting, but
it's your answer. So yes.
Well, I don't know. There's a real we covered before. There's this idea of just watching a professional at work, and I'm very much about that. It can be from just a well-made bar of soap that you appreciate. You go, okay, this isn't just some generic thing. This is special. Feels extra. Feels a little elevated. And I look for those things all around me. It can get us in trouble sometimes, when you reach for the little higher shelf bottle of scotch or, better ingredients. I was raised, to buy quality, buy the best tools you can afford and take care of them. That sort of philosophy.
I'm going to take that I'll take that as an answer. That's a great answer.
I guess that is sort of an inspiration that I look to is, trying to maintain a certain level of quality in just my life in general and the things around me that I'm inspired by.
Have you ever surprised yourself by going in a certain direction, especially when it comes to like what you like to paint personally, where you're like, oh shit, I didn't think about that?
Well, I mean, by nature of my job, I do a lot of different stuff. And, so there's always an opportunity to kind of, go in depth into a direction that you weren't expecting. Like I think I mentioned previously that I've done a lot of stage designs. And that, is a real nice blend in my love of music and art. Actually designing these performance spaces. Because I use metaphor a lot. And sometimes when I teach, it's a great tool to turn people on to just a different way to think about things. For example, like in art and music, we share a lot of the same vocabulary. You talk about composition of a musical piece, a composition of a painting, note, tone, ideas about rhythm. These are all, interchangeable vocabulary between art and music. And, sometimes I'll identify like if I'm teaching, find a student that go like, oh, you listen to music, and you go, okay, so like imagine, right now you're painting a guitar solo. You wouldn't paint all the same notes at the same intervals, dee, 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 dee. You would have some big long strokes and you would have some, shorter succinct ones.
Okay.
Just like you were crafting a guitar solo or piano concerto or something, big whole notes, and then get into, a faster sequence of notes to create interest and add variety. So
I really
I talk
like that.
about things like that a lot.
I really like that. I didn't, because I don't, I've been dabbling here and there with drawing and painting and doodling, and because I've never been that person. I've been in bands my whole life. I can I can cook. I'm a filmmaker, but I've never been able to translate pen to paper or brush to canvas. But I've never quite heard it explained like that, and it's kind of profound.
I think it's a source of breakthrough for a lot of novices that are trying to learn, because the thing that we constantly fight, and even 20 years plus doing this, our brains want to tend to make things in a pattern and make things samey. So if you're painting like clouds or something, there's this tendency to make all of the swirls the same sort of shape and size, and you have to constantly be working against that to add interest and add variety to things. Another analogy I use is one of like filmmaking or storytelling. So again, let's say I'm outside and I'm looking at a landscape before me. I'll try to ask myself, okay, well, who's the star here? Who's giving the monologue right now? Because it sets up a certain hierarchy where everything else dissipates and supports that. Everything falls off from there. So, I might think about, what would be my scenic backdrop? What would be my supporting, extras and supporting cast? And, if I had a team of lighting designers at my disposal, where would I tell them to point the light and things like that? And the musical analogy is very much the same. Where's your soloist here? Where is your brass or your timpanis? And set it up that way so that you have a point of interest and a natural hierarchy to your work.
Wow, I'm going to ponder that. For my own benefit, and if you're listening too, I think you should really take in what he just said.
Well, I mean, also cooking would be another great analogy.
When start with the protein and work.
The idea that spice enhances a meal. You don't make a meal out of spice.
No,
right?
no. I completely understand what you're saying, and crafting something, from a specific point outwards.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Another off the wall question. If you could never use a specific color again, what color would that be?
Does black count?
I guess. If you had to choose one color to never use in any of your paintings ever again, which one and why?
It would be black because two reasons. You can mix black, so there's a cheat. But
loophole.
But, mixing black is probably a better way to go anyway. Say you're mixing a black from a warm, dark color and a cool, dark color, then you have control over that dark range of value. So I can actually shift it chromatically from, a warm dark to a cool dark where needed. And it's much more interesting than just a flat black that is one note. And you might not even notice that when you're looking at a work, but those little subtle things can add up to a lot in the culmination of a work.
You answered that way too easily.
I'll keep going.
Any fictional character that hasn't been painted before or used, who would you like to do? Or even if they have, what's one fictional character that you would like to interpret yourself?
Well, let's see. That's a good one. It's funny because I'm doing a show this coming June with Sean Cheatham and his girlfriend Kate Zambrano and my wife Sonia Palencia. We're doing a show in Santa Monica, and I'm thinking about, I don't know if it's going to come to fruition, but right now I'm thinking about taking Albrecht Dürer's Night, Death, and the Devil etching from like 1512 or something, and doing a contemporary or more of a Western version of that. So I don't know if that answers the question, but sort of reinterpreting a figure from history and from another artist for my own use.
What was that called again?
The Night, Death, and the Devil.
The Night, Death, and the Devil.
All right. By Duer.
Doer?
Duer.
Duer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Duer.
What's the strangest reaction you've seen from somebody else to some of your work?
Oh, I don't know about the strangest. I'll give you a good one. Some years ago, I did a project with that Ozzy Osbourne was involved with, and it was this fashion line for Black Sabbath, doing some, jewelry and some clothing and such. And, Ozzy came down to the opening, and I had this great moment of watching Ozzy look at my painting of Ozzy and then looking at me and looking, back in this sort of triangle. And that was pretty surreal. And they go, they said, Ozzy, this is Jeff. He did the painting of you. And he looks at me and he goes, well, you did a great fucking job.
I guess that's all you can ask for.
Yeah. Right? And then we got a picture and he gave me like this, bear hug around the neck. And it was pretty great.
Is that painting online anywhere?
I don't know, but I did to, go back to your previous question. I did get to design Iron Man for that campaign. And I had a lot of free reign on that and came up with this idea. I don't know if it's some years ago now, so I don't know if it's around, but that was, also a little bit of pressure.
Right. Like, and we're not talking about Iron Man for Marvel Comics. We're talking about Ozzy Osbourne Iron Man, like your own. Yeah,
we're talking about Black Sabbath's Iron Bloke, as Geezer Butler referred to him as.
Right. That's pretty awesome. I have to find that one as well. Of course. We haven't really talked about. You're really big into this Western tone, right?
Yes.
You and Sean, it seems like, especially recently. How did that come about? What is it about? The American 1800s that speaks to you, and these desert landscapes and old timey buildings and cowboys and whatnot. And
well, it's a lot of it goes back to just early childhood. I have a lot of fond memories of like my watching Western films, Clint Eastwood films with my dad, on like Sunday morning or something, and just sort of grew up with that around. And then where it really culminated was about 11 years ago now. My wife and I moved up to the mountains about an hour north of LA, and we were on about 160-acre ranch property up here that sits up against the national forest. So we're very much in a rural area here, and it's a pretty unforgiving and rough terrain out here, and it's kind of just brought us into those kind of frontier ideas about being self-reliant and being in touch with your surroundings. My wife and I will go out and forage wild edibles here, wild onions and manzanita berries and things like that. That sort of working its way into our work, and just those ideas about isolation and sort of personal fortitude and things like that. And then also just, as a subject, there's a lot of Western art being created today. It's a very sort of live and active genre. You've got the Masters of the American West show down at the Autry Museum here in LA every year. It's a big show. And, the work there is a bit, there's a history and a tradition to it. We've always kind of felt like like my ideas and my take on it sit a bit outside of that. And then, Sean and his girlfriend Kate moved up here about a year and a half ago. And, Sean and I have been collaborating on that type of work for, years now, because he's been coming up and visiting me here, the whole time we've lived here. But with him and her kind of moving up here and experiencing the whole thing firsthand, we felt like it was a good time to put our forces together and kind of point our attention artistically at this subject, and kind of offering a little bit different take on it. And it's also something that is very, very explicitly American.
100%.
The West, and there's a fun idea there, and my take on it, I can't speak for the others, but my take on it is a bit more about the mythology, and almost from like my love of painting, and that coming from Europe predominantly, and some of those ideas creeping into, well, what if this was done in the West? And that's why I bring up Dürer, as kind of an idea of what would an American take on that be like, something that I can relate to. And it also comes from just being a lover of the outdoors and spending a lot of my time here growing up, and to this day just loving nature and spending a lot of time outside.
I really like the Western stuff. It wasn't until you said it, but you're right. It's very specific American, I'm a little bit younger than you. So, I think I'm right at the generation right before the internet. So like, I still have, my grandfather's take. I have like a bunch of his John Wayne stuff that he gave me, or I got after he passed. And, there's just this level of, this is crude terms, but badass, and strength even.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Just when it comes to the American West, and like you said, applying classic techniques. And again, I don't know. I don't want to pretend like I know the lingo when it comes to painters, but I can see the allure, right, from a person like you.
Definitely, and also just the personal connection with living in very rural space like this. It just puts you in a certain headspace. And it's been a lot of fun.
I live in the middle of the desert now, so it's
the desert too. It evokes its own thing, and I love that too.
Again, I have a couple more just tool related band stuff that that I ask everybody. Favorite Tool song.
Oh, that's a tough one. All right, I'll give you two.
Adam's listening, by the way. I'm just kidding.
I'll give you two for two different reasons. The first one would be Intolerance. First song off their first full-length album. When you hear that come on, it's you're in for a good listening session. It's just, that song is like a shot of adrenaline straight to the blood for me, man. I just love it. And I think they were playing it on the FI tour a couple times. I got to see them perform it live finally. It was just love that song. And then I spent a lot of time listening to Fear Inoculum as well. And Invincible is a song that really stands out to me. And for a couple of reasons. I just love the song. I think it's a masterpiece. I think all of the members are sort of putting forth their best foot on that song. And I got to watch Adam and Danny track the keyboard parts on that song. Which, that is a pretty special memory when every time I hear that song,
you're like, I was there.
We were down in LA for dinner, and Adam was like, hey, we're going to be in the studio tomorrow if you want to swing by on your way out of town. Yes. Walked in and I mean, next thing I know, I was sitting in Evil Joe Baresi's chair at the console. And Adam was like, hey, could you play him the one we just finished? And they start playing Culling Voices. Mm-hmm. So the first time I heard that, I'm sitting at the mixing console with Adam, Danny, and my wife all sitting on the couch behind me, watching me listen.
Yeah. I've been lucky enough to get to go there one time.
No, it's a cool little spot. It is actually one street over from the house I lived in when I was going to school. So it's just, I'm very, very familiar with that area. I live right around the corner from there.
Last one. I really dug this painting that you did, your Nirvana one. And it just so happens to have a relation to Tool as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny, bringing all these up. I guess I have done quite a bit of work with, music and musical artists, and that one was a really fun show. Was curated at the Sound City Studios in Van Nuys, the historic studios, and there was a group of us that were asked to participate, and we were all asked to choose a band that had recorded there. And Corinne was in the show. And of course, she did a painting of Adam for Tool. They recorded Undertow there. Our friend Natalia, who's married to Jay Bentley from Bad Religion, they had recorded there. So she did Bad Religion. My wife did a painting of Dr. John, who had recorded there. Mm-hmm. Sean did Johnny Cash, Sean Cheatham, nice, who had recorded there. And again, I have this thing of just going for the gusto, and I went for Nirvana, who recorded Nevermind there, and got to take a tour of the studio, and they're saying, Neil Young slept in that closet, and this is a control room where Kurt played Something in the Way on his acoustics, sitting cross-legged on the floor, and
that's my favorite song.
A very sacred and special place, and so I kind of went for it, knowing it was a big album for that studio and a big part of their history. And, so I have this tendency to jump into things and then go, oh shit, I got to figure out how to pull this off.
That's how you do it. So, I don't care who you are. That's how you do it.
Yeah. It was like, I don't, there's
figure it out later. Let's fucking jump in.
One of the pioneers of trance music is this guy, Brian Transell. He goes by BT. And in 2005, he hit me up. He goes, hey, I'm looking for somebody to do these like animations for all the different songs on this album. Would you be interested in that? And have you ever done anything like that before? And I didn't answer the "have you done anything like that before" part. I just said, "Yeah, I'd be interested." And then started calling out people and go like, "Hey, dude, do you know motion effects? Can we pull this off?" So that going for Nirvana was a bit like that. And I didn't want to depict the band, and I didn't want to do anything too on the nose. I wanted to sort of invoke a feeling. And the more I thought about that record, the more I realized, the thing that made that thing special was how, they expected it to maybe sell 50,000 copies, and it sold millions. And it was just really scooped up by the fans. And, it really connected with the average person. It was accessible in a way that, a lot of punk rock had never been before, by these, pop melodies. And he's talking about some pretty intense stuff. So I wanted to do a painting that was focused more on, the mood at the time. And that album came out when I was like 15. I think it was like my first month in high school when that came out. So it was pretty indelible time and ideas for my generation and my memory. So I had done this painting. It was basically a mosh pit as viewed from the stage. So, you've got these bouncers down in front, there's a lot of motion to the piece, a lot of tumbling, a lot of, people spilling over each other. There's this guy in the front that's like punching through the barrier in the front. And, it's more symbolic. He's not, it's not like actually punching through, but it's designed and depicted in a way that is more about the mood and about a feeling.
Did you have any reference for that? Or did you just go, did you just jump in? Did you just go take a picture of somebody moshing, or what's going on here?
Well, once I came up with the idea, what I did was I got their concert film from Seattle, and it was like their big return back home from this huge success that had become, and so I got this concert film, and I just started pausing the scenes that were taken on the crowd, and I found all these like weird distortions in the video, and I just started taking those as cues and doing little sketches of some of the distortions and applying that to this idea that I had about this kind of swirling mass of people and bodies.
I think you just answered a previous question there as well with,
unsuspected inspirations.
Yeah, unsuspected inspirations. Poor frame rate is what you call that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I found these weird, just these weird juxtapositions between frames of film, and it just worked perfectly for my needs.
I have more, but I feel like that's the best place to stop. I mean, how does it get any better than that? Jeff, can you tell people where they can find your stuff? And, I don't know how much you sell online or what your deal like that is, but, if people want to check you out, where they go and all that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I have a website. It's just jeffnentrup.com. Last name is Nentrup. And, mostly all of my fine artwork on there. More of my commercial stuff, a lot of it is NDA and different client work. And, I'm more proud of the stuff that I have full ownership over. So that's most of the stuff you'll see on my site. Not that I'm not proud of my commercial work. I am. It's just, it comes from a little bit different place. I'm on Instagram under Nentopia. And, I'll be posting more there soon as this show that I'm doing with Sean Cheatham starts to come to fruition. And
that's going to be a Western-based show?
Yeah. It's kind of a, our vision of.
Do you have a name for it yet?
We don't, no.
I wish I had a good one off the top of my head.
Thank you, Chris.
All right.
It's great.
Yeah. Thanks.
Great
Sorry, my camera's here and you're here. So I forget that you don't, hi.
So, hey, man, there you are.
Right? Thank you, Jeff, so much.
My pleasure, man. Great meeting you, Chris.
Bye.
Take care.
Uh-huh. Spiral Out Podcast is produced by me, your host, Chris West, edited by me, researched by me. Everything is pretty much just done by me. Go to our website, spiraloutpod.podbean.com. Follow us on Instagram at spiral_out_pod. Facebook, Spiral Out Podcast. And again, if you want to see some of the images associated with this episode, click the link in the show notes and it'll take you there. Again, thank you for listening. Spiral out. Pod dismissed. Wait, that's another show.